Part 61. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 601. Chapter 601 Death for Grace. Soon, Manager Yi brought people out and took the Wu family to Cunning Palace. The emperor and the queen were waiting. Seeing the old marquis like this, even the emperor frowned. The little bit of unhappiness I felt because of being persecuted has faded away. The queen ignored the rules and cried loudly, "Grandpa, what's wrong with you? Why are you suddenly so seriously ill?" The crown prince's wife was angry, and she said rudely to her daughter, "The old man suddenly heard that your brother was asked to join the army, and he was so anxious that something bad happened. I came outside the palace several times to ask for an audience, but you refused to summon him. Your grandfather became worse and worse. He became like this in just 7 or 8 days. Mother, I am not, I am." The queen couldn't say that she was busy preparing to conceive and give birth to a child, so she could only wipe away her tears. The emperor coughed twice and called General Manager Yi to quickly call the imperial doctor. Soon, 3 or 4 old doctors with white beards came. After kowtowing, they began to diagnose the old man's pulse. It's a pity that several people were busy and all looked bad. As I get older, I am afraid of violent mood swings such as great joy and great sorrow. Lao Howie had a stroke caused by being out of breath, and it was very serious as soon as it started. From now on, he could only lie in bed and need someone to take care of him all the time. With good care, you can live a few more years. If you are neglected, you will have to wait for 1.5 years until the oil in the lamp dries up, and then you will go back to the West. But this is the case, but it cannot be said like this. The eldest imperial doctor said carefully, "The old marquis is getting older. Maybe it was because of the cool breeze blowing recently and the bad breath that made him lie down. Let's prescribe some warming and tonic medicines. If you take care of it slowly and take good care of it, it may recover in 3 to 5 years." There was not a single fool in the room who understood the hidden meaning of these words. That means that the old marquis is hopeless and should wait to die. The queen cried even harder, and the crown prince and his wife also had red circles in their eyes. By chance, at this time, the old marquis suddenly became energetic. Seeing that the emperor was also there, he stretched out his hand to grab it. The emperor hesitated for a moment and then stepped forward. Sure enough, as soon as the old marquis took hold of his hand, his eyes were filled with prayers, Huo, Sha, Wu Yan. When he really loved Sun Xinchi, the old man was half the corner of his mouth, and the emperor was vague, but his grandson's name was clear. The emperor finally relented and said, "Old marquis, please rest assured and recuperate. I am pardoning Wu Yan and he does not have to join the army." The old marquis breathed a sigh of relief, put down his hand, and closed his eyes. The prince and his wife were both crazy with joy. Finally, their son no longer had to die. Although there was an amnesty, they also knew that this was what their father had sacrificed his life to get back, so the prince quickly knelt down and kowtowed, "Thank you for your compassion, your majesty, but the civil and military forces of the entire court are supporting the northern expedition, and our Wu family cannot stay out of it. This child Wu Yan is indeed useless, and sending him to the army will be a hindrance. Therefore, I am willing to offer 2,000 loads of grain at home to share the worries of the emperor and Tianwu." The emperor nodded, raised his hand and said, "Get up, go back and take good care of the old marquis." "Yes, thank you, your majesty." The prince dared to stand up and felt completely relieved. After chatting for a while, the imperial doctor prescribed the medicine. After the emperor saw it in person, he left. Although the old marquis and the prince are the elders of the queen, they are still outsiders. It is not easy to stay here and leave the palace. But the prince's wife stayed. After everyone in the room had left, Mrs. Shiza couldn't bear it any longer, and she opened her mouth with a lot of complaints. "Empress, although you have entered the palace and become the mother of a country, you are still a girl from our Wu family. The family treats you very well. How can you be so cruel and ignore me at a time like this? Brother Yan is your biological brother. How can you watch him go to the military camp to die? Previously, your second aunt insisted on marrying Lian Yetu to Xintinghao, which already made Xintinghao disgusted. If your brother is under Xintinghao's hand, I am afraid that the first one will be sent to the knife. I came here to see you again and again, and the banknotes were worth several hundred taels, but you didn't even show your face. The queen felt guilty when she heard this, but she was also aggrieved. Last time, she begged the emperor several times about her cousin, and the emperor got angry. Except for remembering how to treat her with some dignity in front of others, other times she simply treated her as nothing. Not only can't her family help her fight for favor, but they also have to hold her back in various ways. Just like this time of conscription, she thought that the children and grandchildren of hundreds of officials and dignitaries in the court were all on the line of conscription, and someone would definitely come up with a solution. Whether it's donating money, or writing a letter together to plead for mercy, all the family needs to do is follow suit. I just didn't expect that the courtiers were reluctant to cut the meat and delayed it for so long, which actually made the family anxious, and Grandpa was about to die. Had she known this, she would have asked for mercy even if the emperor was completely disgusted with him. She held her mother's hand and whispered, "Mom, I also have difficulties. The relationship between me and the emperor is getting worse and worse, and the emperor's treatment of our family is becoming more and more perfunctory. In the final analysis, it is because I did not give birth to a legitimate son. If I give birth to a legitimate son, no one in this harem can surpass me. Even the emperor will come to our family several times for the legitimate son, and he will reward our family. So, recently I have been resting, conditioning my body and drinking medicinal soup, and I have paid less attention to my family." Mrs. Shiza's eyes lit up when she heard this, remembering that the emperor's legitimate son would almost be made a prince, and her daughter would be the queen mother from now on. That would be the most prosperous time of the Wu family. All the anger in her heart immediately dissipated. She held her daughter's hand tightly and asked, "You are right, it is exactly what it should be, but, will it be effective?" The queen smiled bitterly and said, "No, maybe it will take a while longer." "Oh, we can't wait any longer. You are not young anymore. If you keep waiting, it will be even more difficult for you to give birth." Mrs. Shiza was anxious. She secretly looked at the door and said in a low voice, "Just wait, I'm here. I'll also look for any good recipes for you outside." "Is it useful?" The queen hesitated. "It must be useful, wait until I find out." The crown prince's wife took care of everything, for the sake of her daughter, for the sake of the family, and even more for the son who needed her daughter's care. Let's not talk about the commotion and conspiracy in Cunning Palace, but just talk about the broken gold beach. Jiyan was tested by Dr. Zhang in the morning and was finally released. He saw a bunch of women sitting under the eaves of the house. Original Mrs. Li, Tao Hongying, Mrs. Wen, Wenjuan, and even Huanayang and sister-in-law Lu were all sitting together. There were a large pile of bean pods surrounded among them, and they were shelling the beans while chatting. Needless to say, it was about parenting again, because Wenjuan's face was already very red. Jiyan ran forward, hugged Grandma, said hello and ran to the family yard to find Yeshan. She had planned to stock up on food for a long time, but there were constant trivial matters at home, so she never had time to make arrangements. Today, she took advantage of a little free time and hurriedly gave instructions. "The Marquis has gone into the city, and Yeshan has nothing to do, sharpening his sword for the Marquis. This sword is the Japanese war that Jiyan took out from space, and it has always been used by the Marquis. There is no martial arts practitioner who doesn't like good weapons." Yeshan finally caught the opportunity and was already smiling after struggling from morning to this time. End of this chapter. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 602. Chapter 602, Giving Both Kindness and Power. Seeing the young master come in, Yeshan quickly stood up. Perhaps he was afraid of accidentally hurting the young master, so he hid the knife behind his back. Jiyan smiled and said, "Uncle Shan, are you sharpening the knife for your adoptive father? I have something to tell you." Dongmei came out of the house and quickly responded, "Miss, if you have anything to do, just ask him, and let him go out to do the work. If he keeps sharpening it, the blade will be worn away." Hashan smiled naively, quickly wiped the sword clean, and carefully inserted it into the scabbard. Jiyan said, "Uncle Shan, I just want to keep the money I got from selling melons. I think it's better to exchange it for food and save it. The people in Zindu are so bad. What if my adoptive father is out in the future and the court doesn't provide food and grass? Grandma always said, don't panic if you have food in hand. I will save more and prepare it for my adoptive father in an emergency. Go to Zhenjiazhuang and ask Zhenjiazhuang to buy grain in small quantities and store it well first. I have other arrangements when the weather is cold in winter." After saying that, she took out a thick purse from her satchel, which was filled with banknotes. There are 5,000 taels in total. Although Yeshan felt that with the emperor around, no one would dare to deduct the military rations from the marquis, but the master had given orders, and it was his duty to follow orders and carry out errands. He quickly took it and said, "Yes, don't worry, miss, I'll go to Zhenjiazhuang right away." Having said that, he was about to leave, but the good news was concealed by his satchel, and he took another oil paper bag from the space. "Uncle Shan, here are 2 buns, you can use them on the way." Yeshan smiled and was not polite. He took it and untied the horse while eating. But before he could go out, the marquis came back with a team of dozens of people. Seeing that Yeshan was about to go out, the marquis asked a few questions. Hearing that Jiyan had instructions, he didn't say much. Yeshan went out, and the little fox was the first to notice the marquis, and started chirping. Jiyan quickly ran forward and hugged the marquis' arm. "Father, why did you come in so early today? There is nothing important in the court today, so I went to the dock to help you bring back some people." The marquis held the fat girl's hand and went up the steps. Dongmei quickly moved the chairs, and the father and daughter sat down. 30 veterans their horses and came over, saluting them all. Jiyan was a little strange. She guessed that these men were those her adoptive father had found for her, and that she would go out to look for medicinal materials in the future. But these people don't seem to be wounded soldiers, at least they don't have arms or legs missing. She asked, "Father, you have brought me all the good soldiers in the army. Are you short of people?" "No," the marquis smiled and patted her back, reassuring her, and explained, "They have been following me in the war for several years. They are all injured, but they don't delay moving around. They just happen to be sent to help you go out to find medicinal materials. They gradually adapted, became ordinary people, and lived a peaceful life." Jiyan suddenly understood. These people probably have the post-war syndrome that I heard about in previous lives. They may not have any injuries on the surface, but the fighting on the battlefield has left heavy traces in their hearts. She thought for a while and then said, "Father, will they obey my arrangements from now on? Will they be completely obedient to my domestic slaves, or will they be hired workers?" The marquis smiled and shook his head. "It depends on whether you can convince them. If they are willing, they will be your slaves. If not, they can stay in the workshop of the second village." Hearing the good news, he did not feel frightened at all. He stood up and took 2 steps forward. "Take a closer look at these veterans. It can be said that the expressions of the people who came off the battlefield were somewhat fierce, and even always on guard. But their eyes were still clear, which made Jiyan very satisfied. She then said, "You are about the same age as my father, so I should call you uncle. I am Li Jiyan, the youngest granddaughter of the Li family, and the Princess of Kangal who was personally granted the title of the Emperor. Sujintan is my fief. First of all, I would like to thank you for fighting for Tianwu and sacrificing your life and blood in order to protect our peaceful life. Today you come to our Broken Gold Beach. No matter what you do in the future, I welcome you on behalf of everyone in Broken Gold Beach. Uncles, please rest assured. There are no enemies here. We are all relatives who support each other and strive to survive. Of course, there are always wild boars running down the mountain recently to harm the food. The solace of the village chief's shoes are about to fly away when they chase them. If you, the uncles, take care of them, it would be best if the wild boar is the enemy. The whole village will be happy and they can have their teeth sacrificed again. The 30-year-old veteran had a sullen face at first. Although the Marquis was trustworthy, he came to a strange place after all. But the little fat girl princess welcomed them and told some jokes, so they laughed unconsciously. Even Mr. Ho, who was sitting behind, had a smile on his face. He knew that his little girl was not comparable to ordinary children. Not one of these 30 veterans will escape her grasp. The oldest man with a black face took the lead in saluting and said, "Thank you, Princess, for not looking down on us losers." "I don't mind you," Jiyan said with a smile, waving her chubby hands. "My adoptive father loves me the most. He chose you to send to me, which proves that you are the most powerful soldiers in his heart." Sure enough, the 30-year-old veteran became more relaxed, held his head high, and felt a little proud. Jiyan added, "I asked my adoptive father to call all the uncles over. Actually, it's not a big deal. I have medical skills with the same old miraculous doctor. Some medicinal materials are only in the atlas. I have never really seen them. And I am young. My family is worried about letting me go out. So I want to find a team of people to help me go to the south to find some medicinal seeds, medicinal seedlings, or some kind of local fruit. This job requires walking outside, sleeping in the open air, and may be dangerous. Therefore, uncles must think carefully about whether they want to work for me. If you work for me, you must sign a death contract, not a labor contract, because the medicine I will research in the future may become famous all over the world, and the formula and raw materials must be kept secret. I need your loyalty. Of course, if you uncles are willing to be loyal to me and work hard, I will never treat you badly. From now on, you will have 5 taels of silver per month, and I will be responsible for providing the rest of your food, drink, clothing, weapons, injuries, and medicine. I can guarantee that these will be provided. It is the best and will ensure your safety to the greatest extent. If this is the case, there is still an unavoidable eventuality. Then, my deceased uncle will be buried in a grand manner. I will be responsible for finding an orphan to adopt and offering incense to my uncle. I will be responsible for supporting my disabled uncle until he grows old. As long as I live, Broken Gold Beach will exist. One day, my uncles will be able to live and work in peace and contentment." The veterans were silent for a long time. It was not that they did not believe that Jiyan had the ability to fulfill his promise. After all, there were Li family and Marquis behind him to rely on. They were surprised that a child of just a few years old could actually say something like this, which was well-founded and both kind and powerful. No wonder they lived half their lives in vain and were still a big-headed soldier. This chubby girl is already the princess. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 603. Chapter 603. This decision is so right. Seeing that they were silent, Jiyan thought they didn't believe her as a child, but she stopped trying to persuade them and was willing to give them time to think about it. So, she added, my uncle's houses in the second village are all ready. Let's go and settle down for a few days. It's not too late to think about this matter carefully before making a decision. Hearing this, Dong Mei on the side quickly stepped forward to greet the veterans to go to the second village. In just a few days, the doors and windows of the townhouses in the second village have been installed, and the big Kong has been set up, with golden Kong mats and snow-white window paper. Reflecting the sunlight coming in from the outside, the house feels warm. Of warmth. Mixed with a little earthy smell and a little bit of the fragrance of reeds, it makes people feel particularly reassured. The 30-year veteran stood in the room, slightly in a trance. The person responsible for receiving Dong Mei and the veterans is Xiaoqui. Xiaoqui and Wei Ernie moved here yesterday. She is diligent and familiar with the wounded soldiers. She is a real family member. At this moment, she greeted the veterans with a smile. Brothers, sit down. You're welcome, this will be your home from now on. The princess specifically told you earlier that although she doesn't know when you will come, this big brother the Kong has been burning for 3 days and it is ready to live in. We just need too many tables and chairs. It's really slow to entrust the carpenters from Zhuang to build them. You will have to make do with them for a few days. The veterans waved their hands quickly and said one after another. No, that's good. Yeah, this is a new house, it'll be fine anywhere. Dong Mei saw that they were a little restrained, so she pulled Xiaoqui and said, brothers, you guys have a rest, we will go back to the new village to prepare food first. You should also think about what the princess said and discuss it more. I have been serving the princess for 2 years. Don't worry about the princess because she is a child. In fact, the princess has always spoken to the Li family and the Marquis. As long as you fulfill your duties, in the future, just fell into a pit of fortune. After saying that, they went out. A group of veterans were left carefully sitting on the edge of the Kong, stretching out their hands to polish the brand new Kong mat. Someone said, I have been thinking about such a hot Kong for several years. Let me sleep for a few nights and I will die. It's worth it. Me too, others agreed, it would be better if I had a chubby wife to hug me. Haha, you really dare to think that it would be nice for a killer like us to have a good way to die. Some people laughed, but their words were full of bitterness. The dark-faced man who took the lead in the Ye family spoke up, I dare to think. I dare to marry a mother-in-law, have a few naughty boys, and settle down here. How many times have we almost died outside, but we have survived. Now, no matter what blessings you think about in the future, they will all be deserved. But if I want to settle here directly and enjoy this new house and these good days with peace of mind from now on, I feel unsure. I have to sign a death deed and work for the princess for a few years before I can feel at ease. I'm not saying that the Marquis and the Li family are untrustworthy, but I believe in the princess even more. Such a young child is extremely smart and sensible. Which of you has seen it before? At least I have never seen it. I have a feeling that if we choose this master, we will definitely make no mistake for the rest of our lives. If you believe in me, Lao He, then sign the death contract with me. The veterans were silent for a while, and a few stood next to Lao He. I heard from Brother He the last time the barbarians attacked us at night. Brother He said we didn't feel good, so we didn't even sleep, so we didn't have our heads cut off in our dreams. Yes, I believe in Brother He too. The princess does look extraordinary. Besides, the princess still has such a large fief. We won't be hungry if we help the princess farm the land in the future. They all talked about it, and they were all determined to stay. When the other people saw this, they also stood up and said one after another. If you want to stay, then stay together. I just came back from the north. I'm afraid of carrying a knife in my dreams. If I stay here, I will definitely get into trouble. It's better to go out for a walk first. That's right, it would be unjust to enter a workshop and compete with brothers who have lost their arms and legs. It's best to go out for a walk, come back and stay for a while, and then go out for a walk. We don't have to be bored in one place. Our skills have not been wasted for so many years. Lao He nodded and saw that everyone agreed, so he said, then let's go. Let's talk to the Marquis and Princess, so that we can live in peace in the future and we will feel at ease. Okay, let's go, everyone agreed, and then we went back to Zincan together. Jiyan was pouting her little mouth and coquettishly saying to her adoptive father, Father, Funiur didn't say something right. They don't seem to believe Funiur. The Marquis held her in his arms and sat beside her, saying, no, what you just said was very good, that's what a person in power should do, use both soft and hard tactics. Treat a slave like raising a horse. You must first give it fodder to get close to you, and then use it. If it is disobedient, you must whip it, and after whipping it, you must comfort it. It takes almost 3 to 5 years for good talents to be used before they can be used. You are still young, so it is normal for them not to trust you. It will get better gradually in the future. Jiyan nodded and said, I know, foster father, there is a story in the book about buying horse bones for thousands of gold. Even if there are only a few of these people who sign the death contract and are willing to run errands for me, I won't be angry. I will treat them well. Others have seen it. You will be willing to believe me in the future, right? Yes, Mr. Ho patted the little girl's forehead and said with a smile, but remember, you are their master, and their life and death depend on your thoughts. It's their fault if you are unhappy. Don't harm yourself for anyone. Don't forget this sentence at any time. I know, adoptive father. Jiyan hugged his adoptive father's arm and finally smiled. Being favored unconditionally is the happiest thing in the world. At this time, 30 veterans came back, all knelt down and saluted, and asked to sign a death deed. Jiyan smiled more and more, stepped forward to help them up, and said happily, thank you uncles for trusting me. I will set up a few tables of banquets for my uncles tonight, and it won't be too late to sign the contract tomorrow. As for going south, it's best to wait for another half-month. We need to prepare clothes, shoes, and socks for everyone, make weapons, medicines and poisons for self-defense, draw medicinal materials, brochures, buy carriages and horses. Everything must be complete and thoughtful, everyone. My son will suffer less when he is outside. Everyone was happy to hear this, and felt more and more that this decision was the right one. Even though they were in Jiangbei, it was so dangerous and they didn't have so many means of self-protection. Now it's just a matter of finding a herb, and the princess is taking care of it in every possible way. This really shows how much she values them. Uncle He took the lead and bowed to show his determination. Don't worry, princess, we will take care of the errands assigned by the princess. At this time, the Marquis also stood up and stood beside Jiyan, looked at everyone and said, you used to be my soldiers, but from now on you will only have the princess as your master. Her orders are everything, and neither I nor the Li family can order you, understand? Understood. Don't worry, Lord Marquis. We will leave this life to the princess from now on. The veterans all knelt down this time. Good news helped them get up again. Dongmei and Xiaoqui had just finished cooking, so they called on everyone to help set the table for dinner. The veterans felt relieved and looked more at ease. They started to get busy with smiles and the yard immediately became lively. The good news was so happy that Dongmei Yishan, and he and Shui Ling Shui Yun, and even Zhenjia Zhuang, strictly speaking, were not exclusively hers. But these 30 veterans were signed in her name and from now on they will be her domestic slaves, her private soldiers, and they will be sharp swords that act completely according to her will. She took her adoptive father's hand and thanked her, Father, thank you for giving me such a good birthday gift. The Marquis smiled and said, you are wrong. Your adoptive father has other arrangements for your birthday gift, but it is still outside and will not be seen until a few years later. Jiyan was curious, so she pestered her adoptive father and asked, Father, what kind of gift is this? It will take several years to see you again. 3 updates. Thanks to the analgesic shots at the small clinic downstairs of my home, I resumed my third shift today. My editor praised me for being physically disabled but strong-willed, haha. The update is a bit late, try to make it early tomorrow. Come on. End of this chapter. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 604. Chapter 604. Sanjo is a great hero. It's a pity that the Marquis refused to say anything and decided to keep it a secret. Don't worry, I will definitely let you see it in 2 or 3 years. No matter how cute the good news is, you can only stick out your tongue and stop asking questions. At night, everything was silent. Except for patrols, no one moved around the village. Every household, old and young, are fast asleep, especially in Erkin. 30 newly joined veterans were tossing and turning at first and unable to sleep. After all, they are not used to not having to hold a weapon in their hands and be alert all the time. But maybe it was the night that was too quiet, maybe it was the hot bed under me, or maybe I was too full from dinner. Let their impetuous hearts slowly calm down, and snoring finally broke out in the room. Good news is not so leisurely. After dinner, she entered the space, slept for 2 hours, and then started to get busy. These 30 veterans went out to find things for her according to her idea, so their life safety was her responsibility. After all, it was not easy for them to come back alive from the north. If they were lost in the south of the Yangtze River, on the way to find medicinal materials and fruit seedlings for her, then she would really have a bad conscience. Therefore, she carefully made a list, including clothes and pants that are convenient for walking, high-top boots, hats to protect the neck from mosquitoes, powders to repel insects and snakes, wound medicine, poisons for self-defense, and shovels for digging medicinal materials. Carriage and luggage for traveling, linoleum raincoat for shelter, simple tent. Of course, the most important thing is the weapon. Earlier, I dug 3 feet into the ground, took out all the metal objects in the space, and made a saber. As a result, my father gave it to Uncle Daong. So much so that now, my father is still using longbows and daggers, but does not have a long knife at hand. This time, I have to give Daddy another fight no matter what. Also, each of the 30 veterans needs at least a dagger. Taken together, the consumption of metal is quite large. There is no other choice but to dig 6 feet into the ground again. The front yard, backyard, and even the vegetable garden were all carefully pruned by Ji Yunze. Even the shovels, hoes, and picks used in daily life have had their iron heads removed. Ji Yun doesn't understand iron and steel, the differences, advantages, and disadvantages of these metals. But the technology produced in the past and modern times can always be much better than the technology of Tianwu. If they are all given away, it will be better if they can be used. If they are not used, it is considered as their best effort. Of course, there will be no shortage of farming tools in the space, because she secretly collected a lot when she came out of Qingshui village. Not to mention anything else, there is a long row of sauce vats under the wall. Throw it away if you have the chance in the future. Every time she sees this thing, she feels panicked. After working for more than an hour, a small pile of harvest was gathered in the yard. The good news is a bit discouraging, it seems like it's not enough. At this time, Sanjo, who was full of food and drink, ran over, chirped twice, pulled off Ji Yun's trousers and walked back. Ji Yun thought that some fruit was ripe and this foodie wanted to share it, so he went over to eat a few bites and rest for a while. Unexpectedly, the little fox ran to the corner of the private plot and scratched it a few times quickly. A black metal horn was exposed. She was so happy about the good news that she couldn't do it with her little arms and legs. You can only use spiritual power to guide the power of the entire space. Soon, a big guy emerged from the soil. Ji Yun endured her dizziness and looked around before understanding. This is an iron roller. When I was a child, My grandfather drove this small four-wheeled car at home and used it to farm the land. It is estimated that it was later abandoned and thrown here. Over the years, it was buried in the soil and was not easily found. This big guy weighs several hundred kilograms. Not to mention 30 daggers and one long knife, it must be enough to hit 31 long knives. But Tianwu should have regulations on weapons, and not everyone can walk around carrying a long sword. Before, due to the great chaos in the world, people were fleeing in all directions. In order to protect themselves, they did not care so much. Now it would be impossible to settle down in the south of the Yangtze River. I can't say, I have to ask my adoptive father for help. Sanjo, you are simply amazing. Jiyan happily hugged the little fox and spun him around. The little fox was so proud that he raised his chin proudly and kept chirping. Jiyan guessed a lot, and when it came to roast rabbit, the little fox wagged its tail crazily. So, one person and one fox reached an agreement, ran to the front yard, and found two rabbits who volunteered. When I got up early on the second day, it was just getting dark, and the Marquis was practicing martial arts in the yard. He saw Jiyan climbing up the wall, waving his fat little hands, and shouted softly, "Father, help me quickly." The Marquis was startled and quickly jumped up to the top of the wall. He saw Jiyan stepping on the ladder with one foot and hanging on the wall with one foot in the air. The little fox stuck out its tongue, exhausted all its energy from sucking milk, and was trying its best to hold it between the ladder and the wall to lend strength to its little master. Mr. Ho was so funny that he quickly picked up the fat girl and even rescued the little fox. "It's so early in the morning, why are you so naughty?" The Marquis hugged his daughter, put the little fox on his shoulders, and jumped off the wall. Jiyan chuckled. She wanted to go through the front door, but she was afraid of disturbing the family, so she wanted to climb the ladder over the wall. Helping, she overestimated the strength of her fat arms and legs. His arms were pulled up, but her legs could not be lifted up. Instead of the little fox fighting to save her, she had already fallen upside down on the wall. "Father, I got a good thing that can make dozens of good knives." Jiyan quickly changed the topic and dragged his foster father to the garden behind. The Li family's vegetable garden became a courtyard, but the Ye family and Kui family still retained it. Mrs. Li always goes in and out here to plant and pick vegetables. At this moment, the iron roller has been placed near the small door connecting the front and back, and there are a pile of picks and hoes next to it. The Marquis saw it as soon as he came in. He put down the good news and stepped forward to look at it carefully. He was also happy. He knows the origin of Li Yang's saber. If he can get more than 30 more and arm a small team, it will be enough for self-defense. "Good things, these are really good things," said the Marquis. "What are your plans to arm Lao He and the others?" Jiyan patted the iron roller and nodded with a smile. "Father, I want to use sabers all the time. Not only Uncle He and the others want one, but my father also wants one. If there is any extra, give it to my adopted brother to leave two with brother Liu Yang. There are also my eldest brother, brother Jiawen, brother Jiaxi, brother Jian, brother Li, and brother Mao. They don't practice martial arts, but their young men must be equipped with a dagger. In case of emergency, they can help. In addition, Uncle Zhang Cheng had better share a saber every time my father and Uncle Daong come back. Uncle Zhang Cheng is the one guarding the dock. I want to give him a thank you gift." The Marquis sighed inwardly when he heard this, squatting down and hugging the fat girl. "You, little girl, how old are you? You have so many people and so many things in your heart. Sometimes your adoptive father is really worried about you." "Don't worry, adoptive father." Jiyan's chubby hand patted his adoptive father's shoulder, still smiling. "Whoever treats Fu Niuer well, Fu Niuer wants to treat them better. If these things are made into a knife, will anyone looking for trouble?" End of this chapter. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 605. Chapter 605, Peace and Joy, Worry-Free for 100 Years. The Marquis smiled and reassured her, "Don't worry, you are a princess with a fiefdom. According to the rules, there are 50 private soldiers. Lao He and the others have taken 30, and there are 20 left. It doesn't matter if your brothers and the others are armed with swords and daggers. Although your second uncle has a vacant position, he still has 20 private soldier quotas. Your brothers can be affiliated to wherever they are." Haha, it turns out that the second uncle is not as powerful as me. Jiyan smiled so much that he showed 2 new half-grown white teeth. Then when the uncle comes back, let the uncle also find 2 guards. He often walks outside, be careful of bad guys. Treat him like a fat sheep. The Marquis also laughed and said, "Okay, leave these things to me. Go back and wash up and eat. You should be anxious if your grandma doesn't see you." Sure enough, before he could finish his words, Mrs. Li's shout rang out from the backyard next door, "Fu Niuer, it's time to get up. Dr. Zhang has to hand in homework today, so be careful not to get slapped." Jiyan immediately drooped his head, but then he remembered something and became energetic again. He clenched his fists to cheer himself up. "No, I'm going to rob Grandpa Zhang today. I'll collect all the anthelmintics, poisons, and wound medicines for him." The Marquis smiled and hugged the fat girl, then climbed up on the wall. The little fox was chasing a butterfly. When he saw that he was thrown away, he quickly chased after him and jumped over the wall. By chance, Shui Ling brought a basin of warm water and was waiting to wash his little master's face. As a result, the little fox fell directly and took a bath. This morning, there was a flying fox jumping in the backyard. As the days pass by, most of the corn leaves in the field have turned yellow. The eyes of the whole village can't wait to be glued to the fields all the time, for they are afraid that at this time, the harvest is about to happen, and that they will be harmed by wild beasts or some bad people. Even Li Zheng and other villagers from the Wangzhuang, Xiaoangzhuang, and the Weisha village often come to visit. Because these corns have been harvested, they will have seeds next year and can plant them in large areas. This big golden corn cob is more productive than millet and sorghum. At this time, good news is also coming to my birthday. If you are an ordinary child, you just get up early to cook a bowl of longevity noodles, crack 2 poached eggs, and make a new dress to celebrate. But Jiyan is not only the treasure of the entire Li family, but also the princess personally named by the emperor, the little master of Sujintan. Hence, it is inevitable to set up arrangements. Fortunately, my family has a restaurant and there is no shortage of ingredients. People in the village are all helping. It is very easy to set up more than a dozen tables in and outside the courtyard. Over at the pig house, the big white pigs have multiplied a lot, and now the 2 fattest ones are taken out and slaughtered. With the unwilling howl of the fat pig, the lively birthday party also kicked off. The village school had a day off, and Mr. Zhang and Gilai were invited to have a wedding banquet and let the naughty boys relax for a while. Mrs. Lu has been feeling cold recently and did not come to join in the fun, but Lu's Haiheng and his wife came to visit together and brought a set of jewelry, 2 snack recipes, and 2 sets of autumn clothes for Jiyan. Mr. Wen gave Jiyan a small set of 4 treasures of the study, which can be taken with you and is very practical. After all, the gel pens stored in Jiyan's space are not easy to take out and use casually. Mrs. Wen was pregnant, vomiting, lethargic, and lacked energy, so she simply gave Jiyan 6 gold bars, which immediately made Jiyan's wallet bulge. Li Laoer gave his niece a set of jade-carved Chinese zodiac signs, which were placed on the bookshelf. They were very exquisite. Tao Hongying and Mrs. Li personally made new clothes and shoes for Jiyan, both inside and outside. Li Laoxi actually made a splash. He snatched a pony from the barbarians in the north, equipped it with a saddle and bridle, made a riding whip with his own hands, and gave it to his daughter together. Ji-yin was so surprised that he hugged his father and kissed him again and again. The rest, Li Yonghuanyang and his wife, Lu Biatu and his wife, the village chief and Aunt Wu, as well as Uncle Zhao, Uncle Wei and other old men all expressed their opinions, either with clothes, shoes, socks, purses, handkerchiefs, or various wooden carvings, all filled up. Small box. Physician Zhang gave Ji-yin a notebook thicker than a brick, which is said to be the essence of his life's medical experience. Even the little girls in the village came forward shyly and gave Ji-yin some sachets or beautiful small stones. Li Zhang from the Wangzhuang, Zhaoangzhuang, and Weisha village also brought eggs and home-brewed mountain fruit wine, trying their best and giving their best. The wounded soldiers and veterans in the second village did not have any congratulatory gifts, but they lined up and shouted in unison, "Congratulations on the princess's birthday, and wish the princess peace and joy, and a worry-free 100th life." It can be said that the whole Broken Gold Beach did not make any fanfare, but the birthday banquet was extremely warm. Before the banquet started, Li Laosan, Zhao Yuru, Jia Huan, Jia Ren, Brother Li and Brother Mao, Evans Hyman, Xiuji, and Mr. Peng all rushed back. This is a happy reunion, which makes the Li family yard even more lively. Mr. Peng saw that his daughter had been raised to be fair and fat, and he was even more grateful to the Li family. He thanked her repeatedly, and then gave Ji-yin a rare and unique medical book. This is expensive, and it must have taken a lot of effort to find it. Ji-yin solemnly thanked him, but unfortunately he was rushed away by Dr. Zhang in the blink of an eye. For a while, a banquet was held, chicken, fish, meat and eggs were fried, all delicious and delicious. Ji-yin sat at the main seat, held a cup, toasted with everyone, and thanked everyone for celebrating her birthday. The little fat girl lost her usual coquettishness and mischief, and became more stable and intelligent, making everyone suddenly feel that this child has really grown up a lot. Just like a little baby bird, it has begun to practice flapping its wings and will soon be able to spread its wings and fly high. Mrs. Lu couldn't help but praise, "The old lady is really good at teaching children. Every time I see the princess, I feel that the princess is very smart and sensible." Old Mrs. Li was also happy, but spoke modestly, "It's good that this child has not been spoiled by me. Her mother always gives her a few words of encouragement, and Huanyang, Jinro, and Grandma he also teach me a lot. Mr. Ho and Dr. Zhang are also worried." At this time, Tao Hongying came out with a cream cake from the house. The 1-foot square cake base was stacked 2 layers up and down, and the white cream was touched. Although Tao Hongying practiced many times, the cream was still not smooth. And there are no fancy decorations, just a few small flowers inserted on the top layer. But this is enough to amaze everyone. What kind of snack is this? Is the white layer on top taken from the clouds in the sky? Yes, it looks very soft and sweet. Everyone stood up to take a look at the novelty. Jimin, Xiaja, Cat Brother Li, and others, as well as the girls and boys in the whole village, couldn't help but come forward. Tao Hongying said with a smile, "This is a new trick that Fu Niuer came up with. It's called birthday cake, which can only be eaten on birthdays. The bottom is the baked cake base, and the top is the butter made from milk. Let's all taste it and feel happy about it." As she spoke, she handed Ji-yin a simple knife made of wood chips. Ji-yin saw that her brothers were drooling and quickly started cutting the cake. She originally wanted to light a few candles, but firstly she couldn't find thin candles, and secondly, Grandma heard that she was going to blow out the lamp and pull out the wax at the birthday banquet, and almost knocked her forehead into the shape of Buddha. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 606. Chapter 606. It's like taking a bite of a cloud in the sky. Soon, everyone basically got a piece of cake. Of course, there were too many people. Except for the main table, the cakes on the rest of the tables were not big. It was enough for one person to take one bite. The adults just want to eat it fresh and know what it tastes like, but the children are very happy. The cream is sweet and soft, and one bite is like biting into a cloud in the sky. It's so amazing. Even little babies like twins look like they have white beards growing on their mouths when they eat. They dance around and open their mouths to eat. At this moment, Manager Yi actually came with a reward from the emperor. The jewelry that the emperor originally prepared was made as an apology because the queen treated the good news harshly. This time, the Emperor Su heard good news that he was studying medicine, and he was rewarded with 2 sets of gold needles, 2 sets of silver needles, 2 boxes of valuable medicinal materials and some medicinal seeds. Jiyan and everyone else quickly knelt down and kowtowed to express gratitude. They also invited Manager Yi to join them for dinner, but Manager Yi refused. "Thank you very much, Princess, for your kindness, but I have to rush back to serve the emperor. I will definitely have a wedding drink next time I have the opportunity." Jiyan also knew that everyone would feel uncomfortable if he stayed, so he asked the Marquis, "Father, can you bring a small cake to Uncle Huang?" The Marquis nodded and said, "Okay, please take it back personally, Mr. Yi." Manager Yi didn't know what the cake was, but he thought it was a new style of snack, so he smiled and said, "This is great. The emperor doesn't have much for lunch, so I brought it back, just in time to serve the emperor for an afternoon snack." Tao Hongying quickly brought Manager Yi into the house. She left a few extra small cakes in the house for her children to eat, and also brought back a piece for Mrs. Lu to try. Manager Yi picked one at random, put it in the food box, and then said goodbye with a smile. Li Lauer sent him to the car, so as not to stuff him with a little more hard work money. The emperor personally sent the congratulatory gifts, which made everyone excited for a while before they started drinking again. A meal is eaten until the sun sets in the west, and then the meal is considered finished. The front yard was busy, so Jiyan took his brothers to play in the backyard. Jiaran took out a puppy made of pearls, half the size of a palm, with goose yellow tassels. It was very delicate and cute. He helped his sister hang it on his waist with his own hands. Ji brought the pearl back from the south before. We collected the money and sent it to the bank to make it up. Let's see if we like it. Jiyan is born in the year of the dog, and it's a gift from my brothers, so who wouldn't like it? She happily hugged her brothers one by one, and Brother Li and Brother Cat blushed in embarrassment. They were young and had no plan to spend their money. Thinking of their sister's birthday coming up, they already had dozens of cash left in their hands for this month's allowance. This gift was said to be given by the eldest brother and the 2 of them, but in fact most of it was money taken from the eldest brother. Jimin and Jiaja also smiled and took out a pair of white kitten dolls. They didn't know what kind of fur they were made of. They were very soft when they held them. Jiyan also liked it very much and kept it beside her, but it was snatched away by the little fox after a while. I don't know if it is regarded as a companion. The Li family gets along very well with the academy. It is easy for the children to ask for leave, but they have to consider the feelings of other students and don't run home too often. So, after playing for a while, Jiaran and the others were about to go back first with Mr. Peng. On the other hand, Li Lao-san and Zhao Yuru can stay one more night. After all, Aunt Wu-san and Dazu's wife are already familiar with it, so it's not a problem to stay for a day or 2. The guests all left, and the Li family courtyard became quiet. The family were chatting affectionately, and Jia Huan secretly gave his sister an agate stone. The stone is not big, about the same as Jiyan's palm, but what is rare is that the stone actually looks like 77th of the braised pork. Holding the braised meat and stones, the good news made me dumbfounded. Her image as a foodie is really deeply rooted in the hearts of the people. Let's not talk about the excitement in the Li family, just say that in the royal study room of the palace, the emperor sent away the last minister and rubbed his temples tiredly. Manager Yi quickly poured the ginseng tea and held it up carefully. The emperor remembered what happened before and asked, "Have you been to Li's house?" Manager Yi quickly replied, back to the emperor, "I have been there." The princess's birthday was very lively. But the visitors were all folks from the village and outside the village, veterans and wounded soldiers arranged by the marquis, as well as Lu's Haihen, Mr. Lu, Mr. and Mrs. Wen Yu, Mr. and Mrs. Shi were both present. The Li family is killing pigs and sheep, and the food in the yard is so fragrant that the old slave is greedy when he smells it. If he hadn't been thinking about the emperor, he would have really wanted to have a meal. The emperor couldn't help but laugh, "You old servant, I'm still keeping you greedy for food." However, the Li family's food is really good. It's not as exquisite as the palace's, but it's more appetizing. Isn't that right? Manager Yi narrowed his eyes with a smile and added, "The princess heard that the emperor is very busy today, so she must ask the slave to bring a piece of cake back to the emperor. She said that if the emperor is hungry, it can be used to cushion his stomach." "Oh? What kind of cake or snack?" the emperor asked curiously. Mr. Yi quickly signaled to the young to bring up the cake box, and said with a smile, "Your Majesty guessed it right, it is the new snack that the princess has been thinking about, but I heard that it can only be eaten on birthdays." The emperor took the silver hairpin and took a mouthful of butter, which melted in his mouth. Taking another bite of the cake dough below, it was also soft and sweet, and he narrowed his eyes happily. As an emperor, he is indeed the most noble person in the world. But there are also too many unfreedoms. For example, he likes sweets very much, but he cannot show it or let others know. Because any preference may become a knife in the hands of others at some point. Just like the cake in front of him, no matter how much he likes it, he can only take a few bites. Fortunately, Manager Yi has been serving his master for so many years that he can guess a lot with just a blink of his eye. So he said loudly, "Your Majesty, the rest of this is wasted. Give it to the old slave so that he can have a sweet mouth." Having said that, he stepped forward and covered the emperor with his body. The little waiting at the door did not dare to raise his head. Even if he did, he could only see Mr. Yi eating happily. They had no idea that Manager Yi had been eating air, but all the cakes went into the emperor's mouth. A piece of cake, the size of a palm, the emperor was very satisfied after eating it. Fu Niuer also said that at the end of the year, she would report the accounts and share the money with my partner. If the pastry shop sells this, Baiun cake, I'm afraid the business will be really good. Manager Yi quickly bent down and replied, "The princess must be very happy when the old slave thanks the emperor for the name given to the princess. When the princess makes money, maybe she can reward the old slave with a little happiness." The emperor even laughed and said, "You are also a money addict." At this time, the third princess came to deliver snacks again. She inquired specifically. The courtiers were gone and her father was not busy at the moment. He must have wanted to have a snack. Maybe he would be happy to send her back to Cunning Palace. Who would have thought that she, the unlucky one, would be cut off again? Seeing that the plate in front of her father was empty, and it was obvious that she had just eaten some snacks, she could no longer hold back her anger and yelled at Manager Yi, "Why did you, a slave dog, bring snacks to my father? This is coming in the middle of the night. I lay down and coded on my phone in the morning, got an injection in the afternoon, and updated when I got back. I finally caught up, so keep up the good work. I'll get the MRI results on Tuesday, I hope it's okay." End of this chapter. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 607. Chapter 607. The evening wind blew 2 words, idiot. Manager Yi quickly knelt down and kowtowed in fear, Princess, please calm down. Next time I will ask if the princess is coming, and then I can serve the emperor with snacks. These words were very sincere and gave the princess enough face, but she still felt a little awkward no matter how she heard them. Could it be that the emperor can't have snacks without the princess's permission? The emperor looked unhappy and frowned slightly. Hitting a dog depends on the owner. At any rate, Mr. Yi takes care of his daily life and does his best. Just now, he saw that he was too tired, so he brought the cake specially brought back from the Li family to make him smile. The cake was indeed delicious, but before he could be happy for a while, the third princess came to show off his power. It's a pity that the third princess didn't notice it and didn't know that she had made her father angry. She glared at Manager Yi fiercely and took out the plum blossom cake she had made. "Father, I personally made the plum blossom cake. You must try it." The emperor said calmly, "Put it there. Why do you have time to come here today? Have you learned all the rules and homework?" The third princess felt aggrieved. She had been busy making snacks all afternoon, but her father didn't even look at them, so he asked her about her homework. "Father, don't worry, I have learned well." Unfortunately, the nanny who was following her lowered her head lower and lower. The emperor took a quick glance and saw what he didn't understand. He didn't bother to ask more questions and waved his hand away. "Go back, learn the rules and stop doing nosy things." The third princess couldn't believe that her father dismissed her with just 2 words. She wanted to say a few more words, but the emperor had already picked up the paper in his hand, so she had no choice but to retreat unwillingly. General Manager Yi stood up to send him off respectfully, and then carefully changed the tea for the emperor. The emperor sighed and said, "I don't think I have ignored the princess's teachings, but why is the princess like this?" Manager Yi immediately replied with a smile, "Your Majesty, don't be impatient. The princess is still young, so it's normal for a girl to be a little squeamish." "Little," the emperor snorted, becoming more and more dissatisfied. "Fu Niu is much younger than her. Look how sensible Fu Niu is." Mr. Yi apologized and said it was hard to say anything more. The third princess was taught by the queen since she was a child. She only learned to be arrogant, but nothing else. Princess Kangol is different. Although the Li family is a small farming family, Mrs. Li has a rare wisdom and air. The 4 brothers of the Li family are also united and harmonious. They are also on good terms with the Wen family and the Lu family, and are escorted by the Marquis. The princess can learn a little bit here and a little bit there, and she will definitely be fine. After the emperor carefully approved the papers, Manager Yi withdrew, but was directly invited to the side hall next door by the young eunuch. It turns out that the third princess hasn't left yet. When Mr. Yi entered the room, she immediately asked, "Mr. Yi, tell me, what is the name of the snack that my father ate just now, and which master in the royal kitchen made it?" "I want to learn it, princess." Mr. Yi was tired of hearing this, and suddenly he had an idea. He said with an embarrassed look on his face, "Returning to your highness the princess, the snacks that were presented to the emperor just now were not made by the master in the palace, but came from the Sujintan Li family." "Li family?" The third princess's face turned darker and she said angrily, "Has that dead girl from the Li family entered the palace?" "No, no," Manager Yi quickly waved his hand, "it's Princess Kangol's birthday today. I went to deliver the reward. Princess Kangol specially brought a birthday cake to the emperor. The emperor liked it very much." "What birthday cake?" the third princess asked. "I heard that it is a new snack that the princess has thought up. It is baked soft and has butter on the outside. It looks like white clouds. The emperor just gave it the name Baiun cake." "Did your father give you a name?" The third princess became even more angry. Manager Yi added at the right time, "Yes, it shows that the emperor likes him very much, and the old slave is still planning to go to Li's house in a few days to ask for a copy." "No need," the third princess said immediately, "you don't have to worry about this. I will send Baiun cake to father in a few days." After saying that, she turned around and took the people away. Mr. Yi slowly raised his head, straightened his waist, and curled up into a sneer at the corner of his mouth. The cool evening breeze blew away the two words, idiot. Having been busy all day long, the Li family yard was also particularly quiet at night. Jiyan has room for Xiao Yuan to cheat. After eating and drinking, he wakes up and continues on his path to academic dominance. Occasionally when she gets tired, she takes the time to write down a plan and think about the business of the dim sum shop. Uncle Huang, the thickest dragon thigh in the world, she must hold firmly and never let go. Earlier, she went to a dim sum shop. It was a good shop, in a good location, with 2 floors, spacious and clean. But the business has been tepid, that is, no one is taking care of it seriously. There are few types of dim sum, not novel enough, and the taste is not as good as those of century-old shops, so the positioning of the customer group is a bit embarrassing. It's better to overthrow everything and build a small shop where you can go shopping and chat. Novel cakes, biscuits, buns, plus milk tea, fruit drinks, and even ice cream in winter. Add spiced melon seeds, multi-flavored peanuts, crispy rice, and other snacks to seize the young consumer market and become a novel and fashionable place. You can eat and play upstairs, and you can sell things downstairs. It's a two-pronged approach, so you're not afraid of bad business. As she was writing, she suddenly remembered that there seemed to be a few bags of popcorn in the cupboard. It's the kind of popcorn that's made by adding honey and butter to a pot and then popping it. It's just that it's okay to eat, but I don't know if it can be grown. At this time, it's time to turn to the almighty nursery for help. Fortunately, except for the dead human flesh and bones, the nursery can save the rest as long as the crops are alive. A bag of popping corn was planted, and the good news lasted most of the night. More than 30 corn seedlings actually grew. She was so happy that she almost went crazy. Master Ho got up early and practiced martial arts in the courtyard again. He was already used to the fat girl appearing on the wall again. He jumped up and hugged the fat girl and came down, and found that the fat girl was holding a small basket in her hands. The basket contained some small white things, which were hot and smelled sweet. "Father, stepfather, please try this popcorn, it's so delicious." Jiyan was very excited, grabbed a handful of popcorn, and stuffed it into his stepfather's mouth. Master Ho took it with his hands, ate a few, and praised, "Sweet and crispy, you children should like it." Jiyan smiled brightly and whispered, "Father, are you going to the city today? Can you take me with you? I'm going to visit the pastry shop and start making a lot of money." "Okay, the Mid-Autumn Festival is coming soon. I'll ask the housekeeper to familiarize you with some of the human relations in the Ho mansion." Mr. Ho agreed immediately. The two men sat under the eaves and ate most of the popcorn, and gave the last bit to Dongmei and Yashin. Yashin is still a little worse, but Dongmei likes to eat it very much, which makes Jiyan more and more confident. At breakfast, Mrs. Li was a little worried when she saw that Mr. Ho and Jiyan didn't eat much. The Marquis then said, "Maybe Fu Niu has been too bored at home these days, so I'll take her into the city for a walk today." As expected, old Mrs. Li nodded immediately, "Go ahead. If this girl is naughty, send her to the second brother's place. Just don't let her delay your business." Jiyan protested, "Grandma looks down on me. I went to help my adoptive father take care of the etiquette of the Ho mansion." "I know," old Mrs. Li glared at her granddaughter, "remember, if you don't understand, just ask more questions, but don't make trouble." After saying that, she asked Tao Hongying, "Hongying, are the mooncakes going to be baked at home?" End of this chapter. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 608. Chapter 608. Turns out I want to pick peaches. Tao Hongying quickly replied, "Yes, mother, I have to go to the city today to buy some food and supplies, so I have to prepare them quickly. Every family in the new village and the second village will have to share some. The favors in Xiaoangzhuang and Awaisha village will be transferred, and the Wen family, Lu family, Peng family, academy cafeteria and home mansion will have to add one. It's always 2,000 mooncakes. It's indeed a lot. I'll get some more money soon. If we don't have enough manpower, we'll find more people from the village. I'm afraid we'll have to do so much every year in the future. Ms. Li waved her hand and gave her full support. It's not that she is a bad person, she has to earn a good reputation even at the expense of her family. Broken Gold Beach is the fiefdom of good news, and rewards should be given during the new year. Moreover, the wounded soldiers and veterans from the second village have just settled down, and Daxiao Wangzhuang and Awaisha village are also trying to move closer to the new village. The Li family must first show goodwill before others can follow with confidence. We don't expect them to be like the villagers in Zincan, who are united as one and as close as a family, but at least they need to have some cohesion. Cohesion is not just about shouting slogans or drawing pictures, it must have concrete and visible benefits. The Li family's courtyard bakes mooncakes and distributes them around. Anyone who receives them will feel valued by the master, and their face will be bright when they tell the story. As time goes by, this sense of superiority will make everyone consciously protect the Li family and the Broken Gold Beach, and will not allow anyone to destroy. Jiyan was thinking about going to the pastry shop today, so she said to my mother, "Mom, you can go shopping tomorrow. Today I will take a look at what fillings are on the market outside. It's best to think about some new flavors, just to be polite." "Of course, you lazy girl, are you finally going to mess with that dim sum shop?" Tao Hongying said in surprise. "Then I will find a place today, set up more ovens, and prepare more molds and iron plates." After the discussion was completed, Jiyan dressed up beautifully and happily went out with the Marquis, Mr. Wen, the second uncle and his father. What is rare is that Dr. Zhang received the medical book from Mr. Peng. She has not come out since she was locked in the yard last night, and no one stopped her from playing. Li Laosi turned to the dock when he reached the fork in Guan Road. He and Li Yong took turns to sit in the camp, replacing Zhang Cheng and letting him have a good rest. Especially recently, young soldiers from various families are about to enter the military camp, and there are a lot of things going on at the dock. At the city gate, Li Laoer and Mr. Wen also went to work respectively. In the end, only the Marquis was left, and he accompanied Jiyan to the snack shop. The shopkeeper of the dim sum shop is a middle-aged man in his 30s, named Peng Chuan. He has a smiling face and does not have the arrogance of a royal servant at all. He is very attentive. Of course, even if he has any dissatisfaction in his heart, he has to hold it in. The deed of the shop is in the hands of the princess, and the person accompanying the princess is the Marquis of Xinting. Nowadays, among all the powerful officials in the city, who wouldn't want to fawn over this man? In the end, at a time like this, I didn't care about anything and just walked around the shop with my adopted daughter. Horse Xinting, is he really too busy? That is definitely not the case, so the conclusion is that Marquis Xinting loves this adopted daughter like a treasure. Even if he had 10,000 courages, he would not dare to neglect the princess. After all, his neck is not as strong as the barbarians, but he cannot withstand the half-sword of Xinting Hao. Jiyan looked around carefully in front of and behind the shop and up and down the stairs before calling Peng Chuan to come forward. She was not polite, nor did she hide her clumsiness. She took out the plan and explained it. How to modify the oven in the backyard. The front hall should be paved with wooden floors, wooden cabinets, and inlaid with glass. The second floor should be modified with fabric sofas, small boxes should be partitioned, green plants should be planted, and... In short, there were dozens of them, and Peng Chuan's eyes turned into mosquito coils when he heard them. Finally, he urgently took out a pen and paper and wrote down frantically. After asking for another half an hour, he finally figured it out. Although the new owner said most of the food was fresh, he had never seen or eaten it. But the guests have never seen it before, so future business will definitely not go wrong. Peng Chuan was so excited that he wanted to have a big fight. He was afraid of being rude, so he went out to prepare tea to calm down. At this time, a carriage came outside the shop. Soon, a nanny was ushered in by Peng Chuan. This nanny was dressed very elegantly and tidied up neatly, but her chin was raised, giving her a bit of arrogance. She probably didn't expect that there was Marquise Inting sitting in the room, so she didn't realize it for a while, and then she quickly lowered her head and saluted, her expression becoming extremely humble. The old slave has come to pay tribute to the Marquis and the princess. The old slave is the nun responsible for the daily life of the three princesses, and was also given to the princess by the queen. The old grandma was probably afraid of being misunderstood by the Marquis, so she explained the origin clearly when she opened her mouth. The Marquis frowned and asked, "Why did you come here?" The grandma lowered her head even more, looking very embarrassed and guilty. She gritted her teeth and whispered, "Well, the emperor liked the new snacks that Mr. Yi brought back to the palace yesterday." Ji Yin sat next to her adoptive father, tilting her head, wondering what this nanny was going to do. Even if the emperor didn't eat enough and wanted another piece, Manager Yi should have sent someone to get it. How could the person who abducted the third princess come over? Don't tell me that she doesn't have cakes here. Even if she does, she can't let the third princess take them back. In case the third princess plays tricks on the cake, will she and the Li family still make it clear? So, she spoke first and said, "I'm sorry, I'm afraid I'm going to be disappointed. The new snack presented to Uncle Huang yesterday was a birthday cake. It's not easy to make. We don't have any stock at home. If we prepare to bake new ones, I'm afraid it will take 2 days. Then I can ask my adoptive father to bring them to the palace for Uncle Huang, so I won't bother Grandma." The old mama thought of the angry master in the palace and bravely said, "Princess, it is very troublesome to bring food in and out of the palace. Can you write down the recipe? It just so happens that the third princess has been thinking about snacks recently and is filial to the emperor. If she has this recipe, the third princess will be very happy." Ji Yin sneered in her heart. She finally figured out that the third princess sent someone to pick peaches. If the two of them get along well, she wouldn't mind helping the third princess to please the emperor's uncle. But she has never forgotten how the third princess bullied her last time. She didn't take the initiative to cause trouble for the third princess and just vented her anger. Why should she satisfy the third princess's greed? "Mommy, I don't know. This pastry shop is mine, and birthday cakes will be sold here. I can't give you this recipe. Of course, the emperor likes to eat, and I will always contribute, so I won't bother the princess." Ji Yin stopped smiling and looked unhappy as if a child had been robbed of a toy, which made the old woman feel depressed for a moment. Seeing that the Marquis remained silent, she plucked up the courage to say, "Princess, it's just a prescription. If others heard that the princess wanted it, they would quickly give it to her." Did the princess think about it again? Could it be that, is the business of a small dessert shop more important than the princess's orders? Of course, Ji Yin stared, surprised. This shop is a joint venture between Uncle Huang and I have to report accounts to Uncle Huang at the end of the year. The third princess has robbed the prescription. How will the shop make money in the future? How can I explain it to the emperor? The third princess is the emperor's daughter. Do you want to rob the emperor's business? After saying that, she looked at the Marquis and asked innocently, "Father, who is older, the emperor's uncle or the princess? Who should I listen to? The princess wants to steal the emperor's business. Isn't this unfilial?" End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 609. Chapter 609. Don't offend anyone, but don't offend the eunuch. The Marquis snorted coldly, I don't know either. When I enter the palace tomorrow, I will ask your uncle personally. The old mama's face turned pale at that time. She knelt down and kowtowed, Master Marquis, Princess, I'm wrong, it's all the slave's nonsense, it's not the princess who wants to ask for the recipe, it's the slave who made the mistake. Her bowels were about to turn green at this moment, and she had just arrived at the Lee family to ask for a prescription. The Lee family said that the princess was in this shop, and they could only give it to her if she agreed. She didn't think much and went straight to this place. But who would have thought that this shop belongs to the emperor? Guard to the emperor's place, it's almost impossible to survive. If this matter spreads out, the princess will definitely not admit it, so only if she takes the blame can she cover up the past. Marquis, spare your life, princess, please spare your life. This old slave is obsessed with things, he talks nonsense, and he is blind. As she spoke, she shook off the slap and struck at her fat face. Ji Yun knew that her adoptive father was trying to establish authority and support for her. Of course, she couldn't be a holy mother and help to plead for mercy. Even though this grandma is the same age as my grandmother, her bun is loose and her cheeks are swollen like doughy buns. Don't worry about anyone, if you do something wrong, you will have to pay the price. Today, my adoptive father is with me and the shop has Uncle Huang as a partner, so that we can avoid disaster. If it were an ordinary house, an ordinary shop, the recipe would definitely be taken away by this nanny. Dim sum recipes are the backbone of a dim sum shop. Without the recipes, it is equivalent to ruining the business. How will you gain a foothold and survive in the future? She hates this kind of unscrupulous and fair robbery by the third princess and the old nanny. In the room, the nanny kept slapping herself in the mouth, while Peng Chuan, who was guarding the door, was wiping cold sweat. He didn't think much about it just now. Hearing that it was the princess's nanny, he let the person in. Who would have thought that such a thing would happen? It wasn't until the old nanny's face was no longer human that the Marquis raised his hand to signal her to stop, and coldly ordered, "Go back to the palace, don't come out to smear the princess again, the princess just wants to taste the cake with a new flavor, but you secretly changed your master's orders and took advantage of him. Today I will teach you a lesson. Next time, I will personally raise the issue of the princess' education with the emperor." Yes, yes, the old woman was ecstatic, kowtowed, and then stumbled out. Ji Yun smiled and clapped her hands, praising her foster father in a low voice, "My foster father is so awesome." The Marquis ruffled her hair and said, "Remember, from now on, it is always the slave who makes mistakes, not the master. It is the same for both superiors and subordinates. Do you understand?" "Understood," Ji Yun nodded vigorously. Everyone wants to save face, especially the emperor's uncle. No matter how bad the princess is, she is still her daughter. Just like my adoptive father, no matter how naughty I am, he doesn't like others to scold me. Master Ho smiled and said, "Little girl, you are getting smarter and smarter." Father and daughter chatted for a few words and were about to go to the Ho mansion. Peng Chuan bent over and stood guard at the door, very frightened. The Marquis glanced at him and said, "From now on, remember who is the master here." Peng Chuan quickly knelt down and said, "Yes, Lord Marquis, I will never forget this again." Seeing the Marquis and the princess leaving the shop and getting on the carriage, Peng Chuan dared to get up and wipe the sweat from his forehead. Having a handy little job, he ran forward and said with a grimace, "Shopkeeper, I'm afraid we won't have a good time in the future." "What nonsense," Peng Chuan hurriedly scolded, then took out a thick stack of manuscripts and said, "Our shop has the support of the emperor and the support of the county, so business will definitely be booming. It's just, I need to keep my eyes open in the future. As long as the emperor doesn't come here in person, only the princess has the final say in our shop, do you understand? Yes, I understand. Whether the young man understands it or not, he doesn't dare to refute it now. Besides, the third princess's nanny returned to the palace with a pig's head on her head. Anyone with eyes can see it. Of course the third princess had to ask. She was really angry and jealous when she heard that Jiyan refused to give the prescription, and that her father even cooperated with Jiyan to open a dessert shop. She is the daughter of the father, and the father actually treats a peasant girl better than she, a princess. What is wrong with her? How can she not be as good as that country girl? In a fit of rage, she beat the old woman half to death and even smashed a whole room of porcelain. There are never any secrets in the palace, not to mention that Manager Yi has always been paying attention to this matter. So, while waiting for the emperor to take a bath in the evening, Manager Yi told the emperor about this matter. Of course, he would not say how the princess was at fault. He would only say that the slave had acted improperly by teasing the young princess, and had casually smeared the princess's reputation outside. Of course the emperor was not happy, so he immediately replaced all the personal maids and maids that the queen had given to the princess, and gave them some more stern old ladies. From now on, the princess will no longer be able to bake snacks, and she won't even be able to leave the palace. I have to say that you should never offend anyone casually at any time. Even if it is a eunuch, you can make the princess docile with your hands. Jiyan didn't know how the princess was embarrassed, but even if she knew, she could only applaud her. After playing in the city for a day, she returned home in the evening, and she, her mother, grandma and auntie were thinking about the fillings for mooncakes. There is no shortage of things like walnuts and peanuts at home, and there are even more red beans. Hence, mooncakes with 5 kernels and bean paste are baked the most and distributed to ordinary villagers and neighbors. As for the home mansion, add jujube paste and sesame seeds. The ones used as gifts are new flavors, including salted egg yolk, meat floss, jam, and mung bean paste. Tao Hongying naturally had no objection. Although she had never eaten jam or meat floss, she couldn't even imagine how salted egg yolk could be wrapped in mooncakes. But for more than a year, her daughter has single-handedly helped her promote her private kitchen. The tacit understanding and trust between mother and daughter are amazing. Since my daughter has said it, she can definitely make it, and it will definitely be good. So a long list was made. The next day, when Tao Hongying went out, Huaniyang and sister-in-law Lu had already assigned the work to the women in the village. Some people peeled peanuts, some peeled walnuts, and some cooked bean paste. They were very busy. In fact, although everyone is also looking forward to eating mooncakes, what they like more is the atmosphere of being busy together for the festival. How to live your life is to do whatever you want when the time comes. You can pick rice dumpling leaves to make rice dumplings during the Dragon Boat Festival, you can eat mooncakes during the Mid-Autumn Festival, and you have to kill pigs to make dumplings during the New Year. Don't underestimate these trivial things that sound ordinary, but they mean that every household is living a prosperous life. Otherwise, if you live in poverty and have no food to fill your stomach, who would have the time to think about something else? The new village was busy and lively, and the big and small Wangzhuang and Awaisha villages were also very excited. But after all, they had only been here for a short time, and they had no experience of running away all the way, so they felt guilty even if they wanted to move forward. The 3 of them discussed it and decided to send some red beans and peanuts as a token of their appreciation. Here in Zincan, while the people were busy preparing for the Mid-Autumn Festival, the Marquis soldiers finally picked up their family members. This is the 3rd update. Get up early tomorrow and go to the hospital to get an MRI diagnosis. I don't know how long it will take. The update at 5 o'clock may be a little later. Don't worry, baby, Huahua will try to be on time. End of this chapter. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 610. Chapter 610, Insufficient People. Previously, there were 30 personal soldiers who asked the Marquis and the Lee family to settle in the second village, but most of them were not married. This time when I went back, only 6 families succeeded in bringing back their wives, children, and family members. But these 6 families, including the elderly and children, have a population of more than 20, which suddenly makes the second village more lively. The terraced house has been built a long time ago, and today we just happened to bring back all the woodwork. Tables, chairs, and benches have been placed, and the old men in the village have provided a few baskets for each family and placed them in the yard, making life easier. The family members of the 6 families of soldiers moved in directly. Sitting in the new house, they all sighed that the new house was unexpectedly good. The rest of the soldiers also moved into the row houses next door. There were 10 people in each household, and they were all spacious and bright. It just so happened that Tao Hongying and others couldn't find any free space in the village, so they planned to install a simple workshop for baking mooncakes, thinking that the extra rooms in the row house would not be used for the time being. The whole sky above the second village was shrouded in sweet fragrance. Women in the village came in and out, and naughty boys also played here, which made the second village even more popular. Xiaoqui and Wei Ernia moved here a long time ago, so they inevitably became the seniors in the village. Xiaoqui helped the women from each family settle in and introduced them to the general situation in and outside the village. When they heard that mooncakes were being baked in the village, which amounted to 2,000 yuan, all the newly arrived women, old and young, were surprised and had a more intuitive feeling about the wealth of Broken Gold Beach. Early on the next morning, Xiaoqui took the women from each family to the Li family compound to have a ceremony. The women of each family were worried about what gifts to give to the Li family, so Xiaoqui asked them to bring some dried mushrooms or specialty dried fruits. They were a little uneasy and felt that the gift was too simple. By chance, Mrs. Li, Tao Hongying, and Mrs. Wen were looking for materials to make some needlework for their unborn children. By the way, I'm also drying the furs at home in preparation for some modifications. They will be put to use when the weather gets cold soon. When the women came in, Mrs. Li was taking a piece of white fox fur and thinking about making a cloak for her granddaughter. Mrs. Li only wore a cotton dress, with her hair in a simple bun and a silver hairpin. She was very simple, with only a jade bracelet on her wrist, which looked valuable. Everyone was surprised. After all, she was a first-grade wife. She was no different from an ordinary old lady from a wealthy family. Looking at Tao Hongying, the general's wife, she is also wearing a simple dress and not much jewelry. The guest next to her is Mrs. Wen. She is more elegantly dressed, but she also has a gentle smile on her face, without any arrogance. You should know that when women came back from their hometowns, that is, the girls who worked as concubines for wealthy families in the village, they would look at people with their nostrils. This Li family seems really different. Old Mrs. Li invited the women to sit down and chat with them. She asked the family if they had anything they needed after they settled down. Finally, he entrusted them all to Xiaoqui's care and asked Xiaoqui to just say something if anything happened. The men of each family follow the Marquis on errands. The stability of the family is to stabilize the rear area and not to hold the men back. The woman naturally agreed. Before leaving, Mrs. Li called to Grandma He to bring out the greeting gift she had prepared a long time ago. A piece of fine cotton material for the family was enough to make a bodysuit for an adult, or 2 sets of clothes for a child. Then, the family also had a box of snacks, which Jiyan had brought back from the shop in the city. Jiyan was losing her teeth, and Mrs. Li was afraid that her granddaughter would get chewy teeth at this time, so she simply gave them away, out of sight and out of mind. The women thanked her and followed Xiaoqui out of the new village. They didn't dare to chatter until they left the village entrance. My father-in-law said that Mrs. Lee was very kind. I couldn't believe it, but I didn't expect it to be true. We are also elderly people. Mrs. Lee's chatting and laughing are so friendly. Thinking about my mother-in-law, she is so outrageous that she wishes every sentence was different. A daughter-in-law in her 20s spoke quickly and everyone who listened laughed. Another woman in her 40s said angrily, "How can it be the same? Your mother-in-law is partial to your brother-in-law's family and regards your family as a thorn in her side. Naturally, she scolds you every day. Mrs. Lee is very lucky. Her son and daughter-in-law are all unfilial. As long as she has a bowl of water, her family will definitely live a prosperous and harmonious life. Stop talking about this, we are out of the sea of misery in the future. The men are working under the marquee, and we should be more diligent. With the support of the Lee family, life will soon be better." A woman looked at an old woman said. She was the most severely punished by her husband's family before, and now her eyes are red when she talks. Everyone sympathized with her, patted her on the shoulder and gave her a few words of comfort. But there was also a daughter-in-law who was the youngest and asked in a low voice, "Isn't it said that the Lee family is the richest? They sell tens of thousands of tails of melons a year. Why do you give us only a piece of cloth and a box as a meeting gift, dessert? Does this mean you dislike the fact that the Lee family gave you too little?" Everyone frowned and subconsciously took 2 steps away from this little wife. Zyakui thought for a while and then said, "Sister-in-law Sanhu, when you moved here, what did your natal family give you and what did your husband's family give you?" The young daughter-in-law who was called Sanhu's sister-in-law was stunned for a moment, and replied hesitantly, "My married daughter, of course, my mother's family will not give anything to the water." She splashed out. "My mother-in-law's family gave me 2 pairs of bowls and chopsticks." Little Kuier smiled and said politely, "The Lee family is not your natal family, nor your husband's family. Isn't it enough to give you cloth and snacks?" The young daughter-in-law's face turned red and she quickly waved her hand to explain, "No, I'm not, I just..." Unfortunately, everyone could see that she was a little conceited and careless in her temperament, so they refused to talk to her. They all smiled and mumbled a few words, and then quickly walked into their respective courtyards. The younger daughter-in-law felt a little aggrieved. She looked at Zyakui again, and Zyakui pointed to the yard where the mooncakes were temporarily baked. "I'll go and do some work. We'll talk about it later." Huanayang was in the yard with 7 or 8 women who were busy baking mooncakes. In fact, baking mooncakes is not difficult. Prepare the noodles and fillings, wrap them up, press them into molds, and then you can put them on the baking sheet. But taking care of the fire is a delicate job, and it is not something that ordinary people can do. Huanayang didn't trust anyone else, for fear that if the oven was burnt, a lot of ingredients would be wasted, so she stayed here almost from morning to night. When the twins were naughty, she tied them to the door frame with cloth straps. Xiaokui entered the yard and quickly replaced Hui Niang. Hui Niang wiped a handful of beads of sweat, then rescued a pair of children and took them to play for a while. Hui Niang was attentive and noticed that Xiaokui was a little distracted, so she asked, "What's the matter? Do you have something to worry about after going out? You should be careful to watch the fire, don't ruin this mooncake." Zyakui quickly came to her senses, whispered what had just happened, and then sighed, "Sister-in-law, why do you think this person is different? Niu and I came to the village and had a place to stay. We had enough food and clothing, and we didn't have to be beaten or scolded. We would have laughed in our dreams, but they got the old lady's things, but they still found it too little. It was really..." She wanted to curse a few words, but she was so honest that she really couldn't. End of this chapter.